Hello, this is Business Africa on Africanews, and I am Ignatius Ano, out of stories. New investments key to forestall decline in oil and gas production in Africa. We have the latest on the Africa Energy Outlook for 2020. Erratic power shortage forces some Zimbabweans to revert to charcoal for cooking. And a little later, cocoa farmers in Ivory Coast upbeat about large-scale harvesting due to improved weather conditions. Details right now. Thank you for joining me. Total energy production across 21 sub-Saharan African nations is expected to increase by almost 28% by 2025. Nigeria and Angola, the continent's biggest oil exporters, will continue to dominate the industry, but their share of regional production will fall by more than 1/5 during this period. Now that's according to the African Energy Outlook 2020. The report will be released this week. Business Africa has cited a copy, and among others, it indicates that to forestall decline in oil and gas production, investments in the coming year is crucial.
The report said slow growth in global prices means African nations will have to be very competitive in order to attract upstream investment from international oil companies. The African Energy Outlook is the result of strong regional and international cooperation between actors of the government, public and private sectors across sub-Saharan Africa. Business Africa has cited a copy of the report which will be released later this month. According to the report, total energy production across 21 sub-Saharan African nations will increase by about 28% to 8.1 million barrels of oil equivalent per day by 2025. The report also noted a surge in oil and gas production from new producers like Mozambique, Tanzania, Senegal, and Mauritania. Natural gas, it said, will be the fastest growing fossil fuel over the next decade. African producers are thus positioning themselves to maximize this opportunity, it added. The report also indicates that East Africa could become a major liquefied natural gas hub if $60 billion worth of investment is sanctioned into 2 liquefaction plants in 2020.
Werner Ayukegba is Senior Vice President of the Africa Energy Chamber based in Johannesburg, South Africa. He joins us via Skype. Werner, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So first, what is the state of energy, particularly the oil and gas sector in Africa today?
Well, the Africa Energy Chamber is bringing out a report looking at 2020 with respect to what's going to happen in general in the energy sector, but particularly in the oil and gas sector. And the state of the industry at the moment is that Africa is still very much deficient in energy. But then we are seeing more and more projects which are coming down the line to be able to increase the level of supply of energy. And that also includes us seeing governments making more and more efforts to attract investment into both the power sector, but also into the oil and gas sector.
What are the key highlights captured in this outlook which are critical to the continent's energy needs in 2020?
First of all, for oil and gas, there is a slow growth in the oil price, which has affected the amount of investments that are overall available to be invested in the oil and gas sector. Now, what that means basically is that Africa is competing significantly with other markets like shale in the US, and hence African governments are finding it sometimes very difficult to be able to drag in investment into things like offshore developments, which are quite pricey. What we have seen then is that a number of African countries like Nigeria, for example, like Angola, and even countries like Gabon and Cameroon have been doing a lot, including Equatorial Guinea, to improve their overall business environment to be able to attract much more investment. So you're now seeing governments which are going and reducing bureaucracy. We are also, however, seeing that Chinese refiners are likely to grow their demand from Africa due to, the trade problems that they are having with the U.S., where they are likely to reduce the consumption of U.S. crude crude. And what that means for Africa is that the demand for African crude is likely to increase in 2020 for Chinese refiners.
And investment, you reckon, is key to Africa's energy needs. With climate change activists against the status quo, where would you recommend these investments go to support people in all sectors of the economy?
A lot of African countries still get significant resources, from the development and the sale of fossil fuel resources. That is continuously going to be the case for still a couple of years. And so it is very important that African countries continue to gain the benefits from this. As a result, if all the above has to be compromised in terms of having to be able to get a decent life, then climate change activists need to know that Africans are not ready to sacrifice that on the altar of climate change. And so the climate change narrative for Africans is certainly going to be different than that for the West. For Africa, there is going to certainly be that still, as well as people looking to tap into new renewable resources and everything. But one has to be realistic to say Africans are not going to abandon fossil fuel in 2020. That's certainly not going to happen.
Werner, thank you for speaking with us.
Have a good day. Thank you for having me.
And Werner Ayukegba is Senior Vice President at the Africa Energy Chamber. You're watching Business Africa. We'll be right back.